It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going? Another week in the books, off-season, full swing, I guess, for the Red Wings and for any teams that are on the playoffs. And the playoffs are in full swing. So how's it going this week?
Going pretty good. Good to be here with you again. Been really fun watching playoff hockey, of course. And yeah, like you said, off season's fully in swing now. Got a lot of off season content pumping out at the main site. And yeah, if you haven't checked it out yet, we got a lot of good stuff coming out.
Yeah, and more, like you say, more to come. The draft is coming up pretty soon.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's just the tip. Yeah, we've got play. I mean, there's lots of stuff in the works for the Red Wings at the Hockey Writers. So keep an eye on the team page there. And of course, we'll cover a lot on this show as well. So let's get right into it with our one good, one bad, as we always do on this show. I'll start and talk about a good. I mean, no playoffs, but World Championships are always good. And I mean, not all players go. I mean, the Red Wings do have a few that are going, a few that are sitting out to rest and, recuperate and stuff like that. And they have that right. They don't have to go to the World Championships, but there's a few players that are. So Lucas Raymond going for Team Sweden, Joe Veleno for Canada, and Wallman hasn't really said which team he's going to play for, the U.S. or Canada, because he's got dual citizenship, so he can play for either one, which is kind of fun. Which one he'll choose. But yeah, it's fun to see these guys, and maybe they'll win, medal or something like that. And Elias Pettersson for the Canucks, he's having some visa issues or something like that, insurance, I don't know what, but he will be there as well, so he could be playing with Lucas Raymond. I don't know if on the same line, who knows? That'd be fun to see. But yeah, and Joe Veleno's a kind of a bit of a surprise. And I mean, World Championships are always these, I don't want to, they're not stars. They're those guys that probably would only get the chance here and not the Olympics or stuff like that. So fun to see Veleno there. So that's my good. My bad is it is also international type related. That's the women's Canada team not winning gold at their World Championships. So they lost to the U.S. Quite handily. But yeah, so there's my bad. Usually Canada comes out on top, but the U.S. has a lot of success at the World Championships for the women's side. Olympics, not so much. Canada kind of dominates there for the most part. The World Championships, they seem to have their number. So U.S. wins another gold. Canada gets silver. Always seems to be the case. There was one year where Finland was in the gold medal game, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, so there's a bad there. So Devin, over to you. What's a good and a bad from the past week here?
My one good is going to be actually from today as we're recording. The Toledo Walleye are beginning their playoff journey against the Indy Fuel tonight, which means Sebastian Cossa is playing some professional playoffs right now. So looking forward to seeing how he performs, under the spotlight of the playoffs. Yeah, excited for that team, excited for him in particular. My one bad, I'm going to say it's just the all the extra stuff going on with the playoffs. The games have been great, a lot of fun results. Certain series are going back and forth, and it's a lot of fun, but it's just all the extra noise that's going along, especially with certain series. It's just kind of I don't know. Let's leave it on the ice. I'm a lot more interested in that stuff. So yeah, for sure. I'm loving the playoff hockey though, like I said.
Yeah, the off ice stuff kind of gets a bit much, but yeah, on ice, lots of fun series, lots of blowouts. It seemed like the last play in the playoffs last year, it seemed to be the same way. First round, lots of high scoring games and not very close ones, but it's fun to see the scoring. And I mean, it's not fun for the goalies or the coaches, obviously, because they're saying, they have to fix things. They don't want those high scoring games. But yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, Seattle winning their first postseason game was fun to see, and Colorado, of course, stormed back and tied it up. But yeah,
the Devils too. Shout out to them.
yeah,
Disappointing. Really, you know what I'm saying here.
unexpected
Yeah,
actually, because they
let
were
down like
handily in both games too. It wasn't that they were close. It wasn't even close games. And now they're going to New York down 2-0. I don't know. They're gonna have to dig deep. They're a good team
for sure.
but yeah, they haven't looked like the Devils of the regular season so far. So we'll see what happens with them. But let's get back to Red Wings talk and start talking about the offseason, which we're kind of deep into right now, and start talking about what could happen in the offseason. And so, Devin, let's start talking about untouchables at first. And the second part of the question is, which players do you think could move on? So we'll start with the untouchables. Who do you think are untouchable for the Red Wings? If a GM calls and they want this guy, sorry, that's not happening.
I think at the top of that list right now is the guy they just gave an 8-year deal to. Got to be Dylan Larkin, captain, top center, highest paid player, all the things there. I think I think Larkin's staying put.
Oh, yeah.
Right next to him, Moritz Seider, top defenseman, young stud, pretty much the face of the rebuild. He's not going anywhere. And then one other player I think you got to put in that category will be Lucas Raymond. Right there with Seider in terms of being like faces of the rebuild, and being a young player that just kind of represents the future. And obviously he rides shotgun with Larkin too. So I think those three are like your players that absolutely no way, no how are they going anywhere. A lot of other players might be kind of like in one step down where it's like they're not going anywhere, but they're not untouchable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, like you said, the obvious ones, Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, Dylan Larkin. They're all guys you're not going to want to move unless there's like here, have Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid. Well, yeah, obviously you're going to go say, yeah, sure. That's not happening.
Oh boy.
Sure not. That's not happening. But those guys are probably not going anywhere. Like I said, you sign Dylan Larkin, but that's that big of a deal. Most likely that's not going to be a guy that's going to be moving on. I agree with all those guys. I don't know if he'd be untouchable, but he would have to be a pretty big package. Is Sebastian Cossa at this point?
Yep.
I wouldn't say he's untouchable. Like for the right deal, you'd probably move him, but I would think you'd need another future number one goalie coming in that deal as well.
For sure.
But
and honestly, we can throw in a lot of their other like key prospects. Like I don't think they're in a rush to move Casper. I don't think they're in a rush to move Edvinsson. They're untouchable from a sense of like they're your top prospects. You usually hold on to those unless something crazy comes, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get what this question is most likely is that untouchables means like guys on the roster, I think right now. But yeah, a lot of the top prospects would require something pretty substantial for Yzerman to go, yeah, we'll do that. But untouchables, those guys for sure are going to be the main guys. You're going to be like, hey, these are the guys we're building around. We're not going to want to have them moving on. So, I mean, there are a few other guys that are probably close to untouchable, like you said, but I would say for the right deal, you'd be moving those guys as well. All right, well, let's talk about guys that could move. There are quite a few pieces that Yzerman could trade in the offseason. I mean, there's guys he signed this past offseason that signed to relatively short-term deals, probably with that in mind that he could move them for something. So who do you have on that list that could possibly be on the move before 23-24?
Well, like you said, I think Yzerman certainly has some options available to him if he does want to, shuffle things up and make a deal. I think a lot of people are going to quickly gravitate to Philip Zadina as being a player that could be on the move. I think he's one that it has to be the right situation. Yzerman did name him at his season end press conference as a player that can push the team forward next season. I think that I take that to mean that he does plan on him being in Detroit next season. But I also think that it's too early to say anything is, definite on that end. If somebody, if there's a big deal to be had and Philip Zadina is the make it or break it piece, I think, I think you probably do it. But generally speaking, I don't think they're in a rush to move him. Other player that I think could be on the move, honestly, is Robbie Fabry.
Yeah.
kind of crazy to say, because he's still got 2 years left on his deal. And he's been with the team for a little while now. He's kind of he's one of Yzerman's bigger moves, but a month or two ago when we talked about Yzerman's best moves, I'm pretty sure one of us said the Fabry deal, right? He still stands as that. But I wonder if, with the players coming up, you got Carter Mazer coming up, you got Elmer Soderblom coming up, Marco Casper, I can keep going on and on. They're all knocking on the door. Somebody's got to go, to make room for these guys, and they can't be, you can't subtract Adam Ernie and Hugh Suter and make room for, some of these higher end guys. That's not this, you got to have them playing higher roles. And I think Fabry's a guy that could be moved and could be on it and could return a pretty decent asset in return in that deal too. So yeah, I would look at Fabry. Then one other guy, just real quick, I'll throw out too, would be Dominic Kubalik. I think he's one that somebody could you could flip him and get a nice return just because he's younger. 45 points this season, 20 goals. That's a pretty solid producer at a relatively like a really nice valued contract too at $2.5 million.
Yeah, I agree with all those guys too. I mean, I think Kubalik could possibly, because of his age too, like you say, he's a guy that you could move to a team that's in a possibly a retool or even a rebuilding team because he's in that range of age that he still has potential and he's not over the hill. He could still be part of that. I want to add in David Perron in there because, I mean, what does he have? Like 2 more years on his deal? They signed him to 3.
Just one more.
Just one. He signed him to a 2-year, right? So he could be a trade deadline move, depending on where the Red Wings are. That is, I mean, may want to keep him if you're firmly in the playoffs and you want that guy to be. I mean, he's a playoff guy, so you'd probably want him to stay. But if they're kind of on the cusp or not, maybe in the playoffs, I would say Perron could be on the move at the deadline. I don't think he's moving in the offseason. So I guess this question was move on the offseason. So I answered something else. He's
not untouchable. He's not
untouchable. He could possibly even be moved in the offseason, just depending on what happens. But yeah, there are a few guys that he could be moving on. And I mean, Ole Matta probably not because he signed him to that new deal. So I would have said that if he wasn't. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We've said this many times. It's going to be an interesting offseason to see what Yzerman will do as it gets to the draft, as it gets during the draft. I mean, there could be a few picks on the move as well, and players, and who knows? I mean, it's going to be interesting to find out what he actually does on that front. All right, well, let's get to our first off the rush segment here, and let's keep with the offseason talk. And Devin, I want to ask you, what player on the roster right now that's in that, I'd say, young-ish range that you'd be surprised to see move? I'd say maybe like the 25 and under range there.
Would I be surprised
to see Yzerman trade?
Ooh. I'd be very surprised if he moved Moritz Seider. I'd be shocked.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that'd be earth-shattering.
Holy cow. No, I'd say I'll throw Bergeron out there in that. I think he's somebody that, like a big deal. He could be a piece in that deal, but I would be surprised. You know what I'm saying? I'll throw him out because I imagine he's staying, but
right deal comes along, you never know. And that's the thing. Like, if something happens where a guy comes available and Yzerman thinks he fits with what his plan is, we don't know what his we have no idea. Yzerman just has his own thing, and we'll just follow it. But yeah, he surprises us every offseason, every trade deadline, and you never know. I mean, it could Berggren could be on the move. I would say probably not, but that would be a surprise for sure. Okay, well, let's get on to our, before we get on to our comment corners, we got another few questions, which is great. We got to pay the bills and talk about Hockeypedia. It's our page of the Hockey Writers, lots of great information on players, teams, trophies. If you want to know who won the President's Trophy before Boston Bruins, you can try find that out. Find out who won the Stanley Cup 5 years ago. So check that out. Lots of great information that's added to, it'll never stop because hockey just keeps growing, and we have to keep adding information. And historically, there's 100 years of history to be added to it. So there's lots of work to be done. So keep an eye on that moving forward. All right, well, let's get to our comment corner and return to another, Don. He keeps asking questions and we'll keep answering them. So keep them coming, Don. And they're great questions too. So this question is on a guy, Joe Veleno, who we mentioned going to the World Championships. I mean, we'll see what he does there. But his question is, how much offensive potential does he have? Had 9 goals this year and career high, which is 1 goal over his career high last season. He had 8 goals in 66 games, 9 in 81 this year. 20 points, also a career high. What more can he do? So that's the question. Devin, what do you think? What more does Joe Veleno have in his fuel tank there?
I think that is the big question with him. I think he's one of those players that's kind of frustrating to watch because he does a lot of good things.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard pressed to say that Veleno's a bad player. But he doesn't pop up on the box sheet. He doesn't produce. I think at the very least, worst case scenario, he's going to be a really good shutdown centerman that just doesn't bank a lot of points, but that's not the point. But I do think that he has more to give. I don't think he has a ton more to give, but I do think he's capable of putting up a 40-point season with the right line mates. He's got a lot of great offensive instincts. I don't know if I've said it on the show before, but I've always thought that he is a really good player when it comes to controlling the puck and skating with it, being able to make plays while maintaining possession. I think that's where he really excels in the offensive side of the ice. And I think that as long as he plays with skilled players, we saw that when he played with Berggren, even the 2018 line where he had Berggren and Zadina there, they had some success together. That's skill playing with skill, right? Yeah. I think if you put Veleno in a situation where he can put up points and he's kind of expected to put up points, but given who he's playing with, like I said, I think he's capable of putting up 40. I don't know if that's next season. I don't know if that's 2 seasons from now or, even 5 seasons from now, but I do think he's capable of it. And it seems like from everything, people say about him, he's the type of person who's going to keep pushing to get there. So I have faith that he will reach that potential. Do want to reiterate though, I do think 40 is kind of his ceiling. I don't think anybody needs to expect him to all of a sudden become a first line center. But if he can be a quality middle 6, third line center that can chip in and shut down the other team while also putting up some points, I think you take that.
I mean, the Red Wings don't really need him to be a top line center. They don't need him to be a second line center. They got guys in the system that are going to be that, and probably will draft one coming up as well, I would assume. I mean, where they're drafting, there's a lot of great centermen there. I would assume they're going to be drafting a center or I mean, defenseman maybe, but who knows? We'll see. But I think a forward is probably going to be the one. But yeah, back to Veleno, I think he does have potential, like you say, that 40-point mark. I don't see it either. I don't think he's having more than that. I see him as that good 2-way center that could play maybe spot duty in the top 6. Like if, like you say, we played with injuries, injuries, he could pop up there. But if he's there for a long period, I don't think you want to. If you're relying on him as your offensive guy, you've got some problems. So I think that's ultimately 40 points is probably his ceiling. He may have a season where he has 15, 20 goals, and that would be his highest point. You look back in his history, he only had one really great season, 42 goals with the Voltigeurs, 104 points. Beyond that, he really never eclipsed more than 48. So, I mean, can you really expect? I mean, even in his history, he hasn't been a ridiculously potent offensive guy. He had one great season. That was his last season in junior. Typically, that's what happens with guys in their last season. They're much older. They can, dominate a bit easier. So, I mean, really, does he have a big history of offense? No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
So, even in Grand Rapids, he had 11 goals. That was his career high in the AHL as well. So, I mean, and usually the AHL is a good indicator of what offense you're going to provide in the NHL. So he hasn't really done that.
He's always just kind of been that guy who's like really good, but also isn't productive.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You can't really knock him on anything, but also like put up some points, dude.
But I mean, the reality is, the NHL we're not filled with superstars. Well, not every team has a lineup full of superstars. So, and that's just, again, that's the reality of the NHL. Veleno will probably be a really good NHL player, and that's great. So
I would just real quick before we wrap it up. I also think a player that Veleno can maybe even look to, because he's a little bit older than him, is Pius Suter. I think that because Suter is one of those jack of all trades types of guys. He plays every position, can play in the penalty kill, plays on the power play and spot duty, and can put up, depth production, that tier of production, excuse me. And I think that's the type of player that Veleno needs to try. Like at this point, if you get that out of Veleno, I think you'll be happy.
For sure. And Suter's another one of those guys. He plays with skill. He'll produce points. Did that with Pat Kane.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, you never know. I mean, if he hits the right line mate, may see a pretty good season out of him. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think he's still a valuable player to this team moving forward, whatever role he does have. And next question, another friend of the show, Paradox Destroyer at Paradox. Thanks for another question. Keep them coming. We'll keep answering. Question he puts forth in this one is, how did this team only improve by 6 points? We thought they improved a lot more. From what they, their improvements as a team, you'd think that they would provide more than that. But they only improved by 6 points from last season, which is not a huge bump. It's only 3 wins?
3 wins, yeah.
So what do you think, Devin? How did they only improve by this much?
I think that the fact they only improved by 6 points is like the perfect sign of how tough it is going to be moving forward for this team. Even once they are like a really good playoff caliber team, the playoffs still might not be a thing yet. Because if everybody, in a vacuum, the Red Wings did get better. You said it, Matt. Their special teams got better. Their defense did get better. The only thing that really took a hit was their offense. Everything else improved. In a vacuum, that would mean that the Red Wings would, in theory, take a nice little bump up the stuff. But we don't operate in a vacuum. Yeah. There were other teams that had a big jump up too. Buffalo, in particular, last season, I'm pretty sure the Red Wings swept their season series with Buffalo. This season, Buffalo swept the season series. That alone, is within the Atlantic Division is it moves the standings. That alone. Yeah. And the Sabres aren't the only team. You got the Senators, you got others. Basically, what I'm saying here is that it's not enough for the Red Wings to improve. They have to take big steps, and they have to also hope that other teams take steps back. Because as things are, it doesn't matter. You face the toughest teams on a nightly basis in this division. It's tough sledding. You can be the most improved team in the world, and you're only going to improve by 6 points. Excuse me. So basically, what I'm saying here is that it's going to be tough, and this season is proof of it. They did improve. They absolutely did. You can point to it. It's quantifiable, but it's not enough for them to improve because other teams are improving too.
You said it. I mean, that's the problem with this league. Parity is real. I mean, that there's so many teams that improve, and why do you think there's teams that make the playoffs one season and then all of a sudden they're out of it next season? They can't make it again. I mean, it just other teams want to get better every season, and the teams that stay at the top, they have to stay there. And the way they do it is they keep improving themselves. So, I mean, you got to knock off those teams. Plus, you got to knock off those guys that are trying to make it too. So,
and I will say this too, not to like throw it all on, other teams get better too. The Red Wings did deal with some like pretty severe absences from their lineup, especially early on in the season, right? They were missing Vrana, they were missing Bertuzzi. Those were two key top six pieces that were just gone. And that impacted chemistry. Obviously, they had a really big goaltending dip in the second half of the season. There are a lot of different things you can point to that were like that you can say, this held them back from gaining more.
yeah.
But that's kind of the thing is they still happened, and that's who the Red Wings are still. They can't overcome these things.
Yeah.
And until they are able to overcome the occasional dip in performance or that many injuries, because they do happen, they are going to be kind of stuck where they're at.
Yeah. The good teams have those problems too. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, injuries happen to every team, and there's luck involved. I mean, there's luck involved in the season. There's luck involved when you make the playoffs as well. Stuff happens. You have to stay relatively healthy. Unfortunately, you got to stay relatively healthy to make the playoffs. I mean, look what the Columbus Blue Jackets, all those high hopes that they had down the tubes because of the injuries. They're the definition of the because of their injuries.
If it lands them Bedard, I'm sure they'll be okay with it.
Fine with it. Yeah. But we'll have to see. Next season is another season, and we'll see what type of improvements they keep improving. And we'll see if they get more in terms of points of improvement rather than just on the ice stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's finish off with another off the rush question here, and we'll keep it on Joe Veleno and predict. How many points do you think Veleno gets? We'll go goals and points. So does he hit double? Well, I'll ask the question first. Does he hit double digits? And then how many points do you think he gets?
Double digit goals. I'll give him 12. And I'll give him 30 points.
So it's a 10-point jump from this season. New career high. Yep. I'm going to be optimistic. And I'm always optimistic. So I will hit 35 points.
Staying on brand. I like it.
35 points, and I'll bump it to 15 goals. So that's 15 goals, 15 assists, even split. And I say he plays in the third line a lot of the season, when he's played mostly on the fourth line in this past one. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good. We'll see. I mean, he's increased his totals from his the last few seasons. He's increased it each time. Well, once because he had 8 goals and he had 9. So maybe have 10 this year. I don't know. Increase another 5 points, and then we'll go to 25.
Baby steps.
Yeah. All right. To finish it off, we'll keep it on the World Championships and keep it on Veleno as well. What do you think Veleno does with Team Canada at the World Championships? And predict Lucas Raymond's impact on Team Sweden as well.
I feel bad. I'm going to say Veleno gets a goal and like 2 assists. I'll give him 3 points. I think it's just his game, right?
Yeah.
Lucas Raymond, I wouldn't be surprised if he pops off. I kind of want to give him a crazy total just to like really exude confidence for him. I'll give him like 5 goals. Maybe I'll give him like 5 goals and 7 points. I'll say he's going to score a lot.
Nice. I would love to see if he plays with Elias Pettersson. That'd be really fun to see. I forgot. Oli Mata is also going. He's going with Finland. Sorry, Mata, I didn't include you in my list at the beginning. But Oli Mata is also going to the World Championships. He probably won't put up much points. He's not. That's not his game. But I'll give him a goal. I'll give Mata a goal there. He'll score. Lucas Raymond plays with Pettersson. I'm going to say he does get quite a few points. I think even if he doesn't, I mean, he's got probably has some pretty good players to play with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then Veleno, I don't know what type of role he'll have on Team Canada. So I'll give him that. I'll give him 2 goals. We'll see what he does. I think 2 goals is probably okay. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know the full rosters of both teams. Obviously, I mean, they get their initial, and then they also add after the first round, depending on who gets kicked out in the first round. Here, there's going to be some good teams that'll be out, so there's going to be some players available, I think.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's another episode, the grind line here, and I had some great questions on Comment Corner. Again, keep them coming in the comment section. Keep the questions going. We'll keep putting them and have a section. We've had it for what, 3 weeks in a row?
Yeah, we got a good running going.
So got to keep the streak going. So Don, give us another question. Paradox, give us another question. We'll be good if you guys just do it. And stay tuned for next week. We got grindies coming up, and we're gonna have some maybe special guests. You're gonna have to wait and see. We'll see. Just have to wait. We've got at least one confirmed, so we'll have 3 for sure. And who knows, maybe more. So grindies next week. We're gonna be decked out. I'll dress up as well. I'll put on a suit, break it out at the closet there.
Let's go. We'll be looking dapper next week.
Yeah,
you
so
better you better tune in.
We'll give out our annual awards. First time I'll be part of the show because I haven't been part of the grindies yet. So that'll be fun. But yeah, keep reading stuff on the Hockey Writers. We got lots of content, like I said at the beginning. Lots of off-season stuff, draft targets, trade targets, rate reviews. I totally put out some great articles lately on just year-over-year stuff on players and the team itself. So great reads there by Tony. And so check that out. Check out Devin's articles. Check out Delaney's articles and Caleb as well. I'm missing anyone. I think that's everyone. Logan, yes. Oh, we've got Logan. He's my partner in Prospect Corner. So yeah, Logan Horn as well, and big team of writers that the Red Wings have.
Sure do.
Hockey Writers. So keep an eye out. Lots of stuff coming, and join us next week, Grindies, and we'll see you next time on another episode of the Grind Line.